Hello and welcome to Talk Motivation with your host Elvis Eckardt, former pro athlete turned business owner, motivating you to achieve personal growth, form new habits, and find happiness in your career and life. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode.
Hello everybody. Believe it or not, but I am still Elvis Eckardt and your host of Talk Motivation. I started the podcast when we first went into isolation here in the UK in April 2020 and really enjoy bringing episodes to you, which gives you, well, hopefully some food for thought. Make sure to visit our website www.elvis-eckardt.com/podcast, where you can subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts and other sources, so you'll never miss a show. Make sure to also follow my YouTube page. The channel name is Elvis Eckardt Recruitment. All of the Talk Motivation episodes and the Motivational Monday episodes are on there too. And you can find the show notes to this show there and the links to the workplace diversity examples I bring you today also. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would be appreciated too. So welcome to episode 16. A couple of weeks back in episode 15, we looked at 10 benefits of workplace diversity and inclusion. And I promised you there and then that I will do a follow-up episode where I want to give you 10 actionable workplace diversity ideas. The way I will go through them is I will give you the actionable advice, and straight after each point, I'll give you a real-life example in how to use the advice. Alright, cool. Enough from me. Let's have a look at those 10 actionable workplace diversity ideas you can implement in your company today. Some of them should be easy to implement, and trust me, they are powerful. I have a real-life example for each of the ideas, which gives you the chance to champion your diversity and inclusion initiatives within your company setup. My first actionable advice is to create a diversity video. The saying goes, a picture can tell more than 1,000 words. I suggest you use that power. It doesn't need to be a high-end production by Steven Spielberg or Sam Raimi. Creating a video might take some more effort, but you'll see in the long run it will make a huge difference. A great real-life example is Apple's inclusion and diversity video called Open. The link is in the show notes. At Apple, open isn't just a word. It's their culture and they live it. One that embraces faith, disabilities, races, ages, ideologies, personalities and differences. Because humanity isn't singular, it is plural. I just watched the video again before recording this episode and it's simple but beautiful. My second actionable advice is to modernize your employee value proposition. Modernize your employee value proposition by including workplace diversity and inclusion. Take diversity and inclusion to the heart of your company and make it one of your core values. A fantastic example I can give you for this is the company Chevron. Chevron made diversity one of their core values and it's part of the Chevron Way. They commit to the Global Sullivan Principles and created an award-winning supplier diversity small business program. Again, the link is in the show notes. My third piece of advice is to get your CEO on board. Your CEO is the first line of defense and should play an important and vital role in promoting diversity in your company. It is vitally important that he walks the talk and sets an example for the rest of your company's employees when it comes to embracing workplace diversity and inclusion. A great real-life example here is Nike CEO John Donahoe, who sent a note to his employees on racism after the death of George Floyd, saying that they must get their own house in order. While Nike has been coming short over the years on some issues, they sure understood that they have a big voice in helping to shape a better future. You can find the link to the article in the show notes. My fourth piece of actionable advice is to use inclusive language. Creating an inclusive language is essential for creating a company culture where everyone feels welcome and included. There are affirmative and negative words and phrases related to workplace diversity and inclusion. The most talked about real-life example is the Buffer's Guide to Inclusive Language for Startups and Tech. Let me give you 2 examples of an affirmative term and a negative term. The other ones you can find in the show notes. An affirmative term would be people with disabilities. The negative term to that is the handicapped or the disabled. Another affirmative term would be successful or productive. The negative term to it would be courageous or inspirational. There are many more terms in the Buffer's Guide to Inclusive Language for Startups and Tech, and I suggest give it a read. It's superb and it's great.
You are listening to Talk Motivation, the podcast where you get your weekly dose of motivation. Now back to your host, Elvis Eckardt.
Welcome back to the second part of this week's show. In part 1, we had a look at the first 4 actionable workplace diversity ideas. In part 2, we will look at 6 more. My 5th actionable advice is to get a mentorship program going for diverse candidates. You can boost the representation of Black, Hispanic, and Asian American women and Hispanic and Asian American men at manager level through mentorship programs heavily. It's one of the most successful initiatives. Real-life examples here are corporations such as American Express and Bank of America, as they are forerunners and have created programs that accelerate the progress of women and people of color by pairing them with more experienced sponsors who help them learn the ropes. Not just in their first weeks or months on the job, but over the long haul. Women of color who are sponsored say they are a whopping 81% more likely to be satisfied with their career progression than the ones without sponsor. You can find the link to that report also in the show notes. My 6th piece of advice is to hire for diversity. Workplace diversity starts with hiring. Some ideas I can think off the top of my head are to highlight diversity in your job ads, ask for diverse referrals, hold diverse interview panels for job candidates, leverage diverse job boards. I love diversity working, hire autism, recruit disability. They also have a great UX design. It's great for the eye, it looks just awesome. You could also implement blind screening of CVs or teach your recruiters how to avoid biases. Unconscious bias is all around us. You could even create unconscious bias training for your recruiters and stakeholders. My real-life example here is the company Slack. Since 2015, Slack sought out candidates from outside traditional programmer pipelines like Stanford or MIT, recruiting through all women's coding camps like Hackbright, as well as programs that focus on training Black and Latino programmers such as Code 2040. Once again, you can find the links to these academies or programs in the show notes. My 7th actionable advice is to implement diverse holidays. Your company needs to make an effort to celebrate different religious and non-religious holidays. Not just getting boozed up for the Christmas party. Don't tell me you don't know what I mean. Great holidays to start with celebrating diversity are International Women's Day, Gay Pride, International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, Disability Independence Day, or Women's Equality Day. A really cool real-life example is Jack Dorsey. Jack is the CEO of Twitter and Square, and he made Juneteenth, which is the 19th of June, an official corporate holiday. Juneteenth is an honorary holiday celebrating when the last of the enslaved Africans in the US were freed. You can find the link to that report also in the show notes. We're slowly working our way towards the end of the list. My 8th actionable advice is to interview your diverse workforce. Don't just give diverse candidates a seat at the table. Give them a voice and listen actively to them. Make their voices heard. Ask your employees what diversity means for them and let them tell the story about the diversity in your company and use their photos, quotes, or even make a video. A lovely real-life example is Diageo. Diageo created a video where employees talk about what diversity means for them. They explain why it's good to be part of a diverse team. The video as such is just over 1 minute long, but it says it all and their employees are wonderful. You can find the link to the YouTube video in the show notes. My 9th actionable advice is to use the power of social media. Use the likes of LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, your company's webpage as channels to promote your diversity and inclusion message. Create and use photo, video, and blog content. Create your own diversity hashtag. A great example here is the company IBM. IBM created their own inclusion hashtag, #InclusiveIBM. By creating their own inclusion hashtag, IBM demonstrates its inclusive company culture on social media. Plus, it is super authentic. Again, you can find the link in the show notes. Last but not least, create ERGs. Now, you might ask, what is an ERG? ERG stands for Employee Resource Group. Get employees that are typically formed around a common social identity such as gender, race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, or even a life stage such as parenthood together and let them bring different perspectives, experience, and ideas to the table. Your company's ERGs have to be inclusive and need to be open for any of your employees to join. A great example is Estée Lauder, and my wife loves the brand. By the way, Kate hasn't forced me to use Estée Lauder as an example. I chose that myself. Over there, they have 30 ERGs across all geographic regions with over 4,500 employees participating collectively, and you haven't heard the best yet. Each group was started by their employees, and it includes groups for women, veterans, families, LGBTQ+ individuals, and allies. How good is that? Again, you can find a link to the report in the show notes. And that was number 10. Generally speaking, encouraging a diverse and inclusive workplace has a direct and tangible effect on your company's bottom line. It is proven that companies with a diverse workforce and inclusive workplace outperform its peers and engineer greater profits. It is a serious competitive advantage. Use it, or make use of it. I hope you liked some of these ideas and they added some value. If not, thanks anyway for listening to my 2 cents. I probably repeat myself here, but you can find all the links to the ideas in the show notes. Again, make use of them or don't. I wrote an ebook surrounding diversity and inclusion. If you want a copy, drop me a message to hello@elvis-eckardt.com or send me a message on social media. And on this note, I want to finish this week's episode. Thanks for listening to Talk Motivation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please share the love and let your network know about it. Thank you so much for making this one of your favorite podcasts. Please do go subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes because it helps others to find the show, or better yet, just tell your family, friends, and or acquaintances about it. Everyone really who loves a bit of positivity. Feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn and we can take the conversation there.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talk Motivation with your host, Elvis Eckardt. To listen to this episode again and to find previous episodes, search Talk Motivation on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Sayonara, muchachos!